It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday. Really, it's a finish strong Thursday to wrap up the week with our guy, Professor Greg Cosell. The most popular day of the week, the most popular episode of the week, because Greg is awesome. Been killing it at NFL films for over 40 years, and this is rare. We almost always talk to Greg in his office at NFL Films in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Today, he's actually at the Combine in his hotel room. So we'll get to Greg momentarily. We are presented by DraftKings. I'll let you know the winner of the Spread the Word contest. I still have so many awesome press passes. Maybe I can give you guys an update on the press passes I have. You can always get a signed picture or signed football card, but I got some awesome press passes that I want to give you guys a little bit later on. I'm going to give out to a couple people. You'll know the rest of them. So we'll have the Spread the Word winner, the sponsor confirmation email winner, and the YouTube shout-out video, which, by the way, is really easy to win. There's only like one or two people that even try for it every week. But you know how I like to roll on a Greg Cosell Thursday. Let's get right to him. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, Greg, as mentioned, you are coming to us live via your iPad from your hotel room in Indianapolis. Let's just start with that, Greg. You know, almost every time we talk to you, you're at your office in Mount Laurel. So for you to go to the Combine, you must feel like it's pretty valuable or that you get a lot out of it. Why are you there? Why do you go to the Combine?
Well, first of all, I get an opportunity to be in the dome on the field to see the workouts, to see players up close. There's always some value in that. I love being there, obviously, for the quarterbacks, which are the wide receivers, which is Saturday's workout. So that's really helpful to me. And then it's just talking to a lot of people, Ross. You know, talking about I've had two great lengthy meetings already with offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches, and you'll learn a lot, not only about how they see the quarterbacks in this draft, but just about pass game concepts in general, how you attack, all those kinds of conversations are really, really helpful for me because I'm always trying to learn. Then when I go back and watch tape, something I heard resonates with me. I hear it a little differently. So even if it's not something that is totally brand new to me, or I go, oh my God, I never even thought of that. Just the way a coach talks about it is way different than maybe the way I think about it. And it just allows me to keep learning. And then I just keep meeting more and more people in the business. And that's the way you keep learning. You just keep learning by talking to more people and hearing more things.
You know, Greg, it's interesting. You are an intellectual. And, a lot of people would think, really, a football guy? But there's just so much nuance and detail. It's like you're playing chess,
Yep.
But all 22 pieces are moving the whole time. Think about that. Think about like these great chess players. That's what football is, except it's all 22 pieces are moving all the time. That's the part of it that you really like, isn't it?
I love it. Yeah, that's the part I really like. I love, I had a conversation yesterday with an OC in the league, and we were just talking. I was asking him how, I love to find out, Russ, I guess, how things are taught, because I watch tape and you can see all the route concepts. I can see all the coverages. I love to know how things are taught because you see a route concept that's in everybody's playbook, and you see it run from different personnel packages, different formations. I love to find out how that stuff's taught. How you attack coverages, this stuff to me is fascinating because coaches think of it just the way you said. They're not just out there saying, oh, let's go out and play some football. They take a lot of time working through this, and I love learning about those things. Then, of course, the draft players. I love having conversations about the players, and I've seen a good bunch of players already this year, probably more than I've seen up to this point in any given year, with way many more to go, as you know.
So we're going to get into sort of the next group of quarterbacks, if you will, or some more quarterbacks. There is some veteran player news I might get to with you. There's a bunch of news out, Greg. It's not good as it relates to Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman for Georgia. I never ask you to talk about the off the field stuff or whatever, because I know you don't care about that stuff or know about that stuff. But I do think in the context of me talking about it a little bit later in the show, and he was booked last night on these charges of reckless driving and racing. I think I want to put into frame of reference what kind of player he is, because it sounds like a lot of people think he's the most talented player, best player in the draft.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of things, which I'm obviously not going to get into, but I think more things will come out, and then teams will have to decide if you want to take him that high. But as a player, I would say that he's a really, really good prospect. One of the things that I did notice this year, and I think this is really important, is that he started to play as this season progressed more and more snaps. So he's not one of those guys that play 20 snaps a game for Georgia. He started to play meaningful snaps over the last 6, 7, 8 games. I would say probably 40 to 50 snaps a game, and I think that's really important. You're dealing with a guy that has tremendous quickness, tremendous body quickness, really good hand usage. So many times I would see him with arm over swim moves where he'd beat offensive linemen. He's got power to him. I mean, essentially, for a defensive tackle, he's a really good prospect. I remember watching Georgia's defense last year, Ross, when I think they had 8 guys at the combine on defense, and maybe 8 guys were drafted. And he was the player who stood out. He wasn't even coming out last year, but I'd come away from watching Georgia's defense, and I watched the same games over and over and over because they had so many guys in the draft. And every time it would be, wow, 88's the guy that really stands out, even though he couldn't come out. So he is a high level prospect as a player. There's no question about that.
Is he what type of D tackle is he, Greg? Is there a good player comparison? He's big. He's not like an Aaron Donald, but he moves well. I'm trying to think. Is he like a Chris Jones, maybe?
I would say that he's not quite as big as Chris Jones, but I would say he's kind of naturally quicker than Chris Jones. Chris Jones, might be stronger, but I would say that Carter is naturally quicker with his body movement, his lateral quickness. He can beat guys off the ball with quickness. Not that Chris Jones can't, but I think Carter's a more naturally quick player. There is a player who in this draft who I haven't seen enough of him. I actually saw him yesterday and said hello to him because you see the guys, walking around. There is a player in this draft who did just with a cursory look remind me of Chris Jones, and that's a kid from Florida named Gervon Dexter. I don't know if you've heard that name.
I've heard the name, but I don't know a whole lot about him. Haven't watched him yet.
And that's a cursory look. I haven't done him in detail, but my initial thought, because he's about 6'6", 315, and I saw him, and boy, does he look like an athlete. A lot of these guys, they don't look, 300 pounds when you see them. They look really well put together.
Oh yeah, no, I think people would be stunned if they were there and they saw really how slender guys look. Right? Like
I know.
You
it's
think
amazing.
of football players.
I know.
So last week, we talked about Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson. We didn't, Greg, really get into Will Levis.
Yeah.
It feels like Levis and Richardson are the 2 guys that people are most polarized on. It seems like people kind of know how they feel about Stroud and Young. But Levis and Richardson are the 2 that, man, depending on who you talk to, they have different opinions of. What do you see when you break down the tape of Kentucky's Will Levis?
Yeah, Levis is interesting. I watched him in detail last summer from his 2021 season, and then I watched him in detail this year, obviously, from the 2022 season. And in 2021, the offense, and there's probably many reasons for this that we don't know, but in 2021, the offense had a much more streamlined look. He could play far more rhythmically. He would get back, the ball came out. He looked very timing based. He's got a power arm, a compact delivery. Ball comes out. He's big. He's physical. He's competitive. He's a little stiff, but he looked very good in 2021. In 2022, for whatever reason, and the O-line was not very good. They had lost, I think, 4 guys to the NFL, so they were only playing with 1 starter. They lost some skill players as well. for some reason, the offense didn't have the same fluid feel to it. And everything with Will Levis looked like a struggle, Ross. So the talent obviously doesn't change. The traits don't change. But now you have to decide, what kind of player he is. Like I said, big arm, can make all the throws, willing to make throws. I think in an ideal world, and I had this conversation with a coach, he'd probably be a second-round type player. But we know that that's not the way it works. So someone's going to draft him. I think he needs to be in a really defined system. Put him under center. Have play action be a significant part of the pass game. That defines reads. You're trying to generate as much primary read throws with Will Levis as you possibly can, Ross. That's really the goal if he has to play early.
So, but why wouldn't you say that about any quarterback? Aren't you trying to give as many primary read throws for any quarterback?
That's always the goal. Some can't do much beyond that. Others can. Right now, I don't think Will Levis can do much beyond that. And that's why it would be especially important for someone like him. Of course, you're always that's what coaches do. It's funny you say that because that was part of a conversation I had with a coach. That's what they're trying to do. They're always trying to generate primary read throws. Sometimes that works beautifully. Other times it doesn't. And then what happens? Some quarterbacks, when that doesn't happen, they're done. The play's over. They can't do anything else for whatever the reason. Other quarterbacks can obviously then do other things.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember people at Penn State, Greg, telling me when he was a freshman and Tommy Stevens and Sean Clifford were competing for the starting job, that if you just went to the practice and watched them throw, you would say, that's the kid over there.
And that's true.
That's because he looks physically great. I mean, he's got a big arm. There were years, I don't know if Clifford got hurt or what, but I remember against Ohio State, they brought him in and he probably ran for almost 100 yards, as a power runner, as like quarterback powers and stuff.
I would say this. I think Levis, you can call designed runs, and he's good as a designed runner, but he doesn't have very good pocket movement. Those are two different things. He's a little stiff in the pocket. He's a strong, physical, competitive runner, but as a pocket mover, which is something he's going to need to work on, that's not something at this point he does well. But there's no question, Ross, and what you said about Penn State is 100% true. He is a compact, twitchy, effortless thrower. He can attack all three levels of the defense. He's super competitive. I think he needs to work on touch and pace. He's more of a power thrower, but he will look really good throwing the football on Saturday here at the Combine.
That makes me nervous, what you said about the pocket movement and stiffness. I don't know that many guys that improve that much. That seems like a feel thing.
Yeah, that's why that's a little bit of a concern.
The next two quarterbacks that we're going to talk about, Greg, I called some of their games. I called a Clayton Tune game for Houston when they played at UConn in 2021, and I called a Jake Haener game for Fresno State when they played Colorado State. So Let's start with Clayton Tune. Greg, what have you seen from him?
Yeah, Clayton Tune was really interesting to me. This was his third season under Dana Holgorsen. So obviously he should know that offense. But I thought in watching his tape, there was a tale of two seasons. The first half of the season, Tune struggled with his field vision, his route recognition versus coverage. I came away after I watched the first 2 or 3 games early in the season saying, God, he's been in this offense this is his third year. It looks to me like he's struggling to understand the reads and where to throw the football. And then all of a sudden, as the second half of the season progressed, and you saw more games, he looked like a different quarterback, more decisiveness from the pocket, understanding where to go with the ball, turning it loose. He's got some mobility to him. Overall, I didn't come away feeling like, wow, this guy's a really good prospect. Could he become a quality starter down the road? Maybe, depending on team, scheme, how he's coached, a lot of other factors. But I didn't see him as a guy that you would think this guy's going to come in and sooner than later would have a chance to start. He struck me as clearly a day 3 type pick.
What about Haener, who a lot of people were talking about as the best quarterback at the Senior Bowl? There was some buzz about him.
I love Jake Haener. Now I know what he is. He's 6 feet 208 because he was at the Senior Bowl, so we have the measurements, relatively official. Obviously, you would like a taller quarterback, but we've accepted that quarterbacks are a little shorter. Historical precedent says that shorter quarterbacks don't normally, make it in this league. We're going to find that out with a lot of teams this year. Sam Howell looks like right now he'd be the starter for the Commanders. So we might find out about shorter quarterbacks. Clearly, Bryce Young is a shorter quarterback as well. But I think Jake Haener was one of the most fun watches. He is physically and mentally quick twitch. He's got a strong sense of timing and rhythm. The ball comes out. It shows up every single game. He is tough as nails. You have to go back to 2021 when Fresno State played at UCLA, and he was hurt. I think he had an oblique injury, and every throw he made, I think from the middle of the third quarter on, you could see him just grab his side and almost fall down, and yet he played the whole game, and they came back and on the road beat UCLA. This kid is so much fun to watch. He is tough as nails, obviously not a high level talent in terms of throwing the ball, but this is the kind of kid you're going to love to have in your quarterback room. And who knows what happens down the road, because these are the kinds of kids you don't want to count out.
Interesting. I like it. I like when there's a guy like this that you are really high on. Couple of veteran players in the news that I wanted to get your thoughts on, Greg, before I let you go today. Carson Wentz, speaking of getting let go, got let go by Washington. At this stage of his career, Greg, what is he? What can he be? And I guess, how did we get here? How did we get to this point? It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah. My sense is, and I had this conversation with a coach, that Carson Wentz's career might be over because he's not going to be signed as a starting quarterback. The feeling is that he does not really have the mindset to be a backup, that he's not, you always hear coaches, Ross, and you know this from playing, you always hear coaches talk about the room with every position. We want our room to be good. There's the belief that Carson Wentz does not enhance a quarterback room for whatever reason. I don't get into the personal stuff and all that, but it's very possible that his career could be over. The thing is with Wentz is, in many ways, he hasn't improved. We saw a player back in 2017 with high-level talent, could make throws, could move around, but there were certain things as his career progressed that, he needed to improve on overall and just never really took that next step. And it became difficult to play him, and there were too many negative plays. And, like I said, it's very possible his career could be over.
Another quarterback that got released is Marcus Mariota.
Yeah.
He strikes me as a guy, Greg, that could be a good backup for people, especially if you've got a quarterback that's mobile. And I do think, because he's been in that role, I think he would accept that. And I think he would be probably a pretty good backup.
Yeah, and I think he'd be a good guy in a quarterback room from what I've been told. So I think he will sign somewhere. And I think, look, if you had to play him like Atlanta did last year, you can line up and play with him. Obviously, he's not a starter. He won't be thought of as, hey, we're going to get him and he's going to be our starter. But I would think if he wants to continue playing football, that he will be signed, and he will be signed as a backup. And if you had to play him, depending on the rest of your team and your offensive approach and what kind of defense you have, you can line up. Look at last year in Atlanta. They were a competitive team, Ross. And then, obviously Mariota is not a high-level quarterback in this league, but you can line up and play and be competitive. And Atlanta was competitive.
Without question. Last guy I wanted to ask you about, Kenny Golladay. He got a lot of money for a reason, Greg, because of what he did in Detroit. Did nothing with the New York Giants. What do you think happened there, and what do you think he has?
Don't know what happened, but as you know, when you saw him in Detroit with Matthew Stafford, he looked like one of those big, physical, competitive boundary X receivers that every team wants, that you can line up in 3-by-1 sets and you can say, hey, you can win. And he could win with his size, with his catching ability. I don't know what happened. Something went wrong that we don't know because we were not there. but he certainly in Detroit looked like that guy. Had a great conversation with a wide receivers coach last night who talked about the absolute importance of having a boundary X receiver who can win, because with the proliferation of 3-by-1 sets and the way defenses are now matching the trip side with a lot of zone and taking that boundary safety and making him part of the coverage to the trip side, is you need an alpha dog at boundary X. There's not that many of them around. There's probably none in this draft, but Golladay looked like he was somewhat that guy in Detroit. And I'm sure when the Giants signed him, they thought, hey, that's what we're getting. And for whatever reason, Ross, it never turned out.
Check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. Can't wait to talk with you next week, Greg, with some more notes and nuggets from your time at the Combine. Thank you so much for coming on from Indy.
Hey, thanks, Ross. Always look forward to it. Appreciate it.
Always look forward to talking with Greg, just like I always look forward to cracking a Labatt Blue Light. Might have to have a couple of those bad boys today on my 44th birthday. Yeah, I am that guy that tells you that. Well, listen, I talk about Labatt Blue every show. I got to figure out a different way to talk to you guys about it. So tonight, celebrate my birthday. I'm going to have a couple Labatt Blue Lights with my family. Live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, we'll start with ex-NFL groundskeeper George Thomas saying the Super Bowl field was overwatered.
I think it's Toma.
Toma?
I think it's Toma, yeah. I'll let that one go. You probably shouldn't need to know the name of a groundskeeper. But, you know, I guess my question is, how does that happen? How does it happen that it's overwatered? Like, I don't understand that at all. You know, you'd think that they would have this nailed down at this point, but obviously it can't be that easy. I am not a horticulturist myself, so I'm not out here to criticize people because I obviously don't know what I'm talking about and have no idea how something like that would happen.
Tuck's Takes.
Aaron Rodgers has yet to make a decision despite coming out of his darkness retreat.
Well, first of all, I would be shocked if he doesn't play football this year. I think it goes against human nature to turn down $60 million guaranteed for 5 months of work. $60 million for 17 games. I'd be shocked if he retired. And honestly, just based on Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM's comments, it seems pretty clear that the Packers are kind of ready to move on. So what is Rodgers really deciding at this point? It feels like Rodgers is deciding whether or not he's more or less going to stick it to the Packers and make them keep him and play him, even though they don't want to anymore. Packers pretty clearly want to pass it on to Jordan Love, trade Rodgers. I think from all the comments, all the stuff you hear, all the reports, that's pretty clear. And Aaron Rodgers has to decide now if he wants to go somewhere else, because nobody's going to trade for him unless he wants to go somewhere else, right? He might just say to the Packers, nope, I want to play there. And I don't think they would be happy about it. And they'd have to suck it up and restructure his contract somehow and have Rodgers be their quarterback again. It's a fascinating situation.
Tuck's Takes.
An arrest warrant has been issued for Georgia defensive lineman Jalen Carter for reckless driving and racing in a crash that took the life of a teammate and a former staffer.
Awful. He's not talking at the Combine as a result of this. You know, the police report indicated that they were racing and that the guy he was racing against had been drinking, and just terrible. His other teammate, Nolan Smith, broke down at the Combine yesterday when he was asked about it. Just a horrible situation. And Greg said it earlier in the show. Some teams are really going to have to make a decision as to, you know, what they want to do with Jalen Carter.
Tuck's Takes.
Seahawks starting center Austin Blythe retires after 7 years and starting all 17 games last season.
That's a little surprising to me, right? I mean, I think he's 30 years old. He's a little bit older, but played 7 years, started every game last year, just going to retire. He's a free agent, I think. So you'd think he would get pretty darn good money. So you never know. Maybe it's hits to the head thing, or maybe it's orthopedic, or maybe he just doesn't have the desire to put in the work, which is totally understandable, to play at a really high level. All of those things are perfectly acceptable. I don't know if we'll have time or not, Jack, for an email, but I want to make sure we at least get the winners out this week. So let's do it, Mike Singletary.
I want winners. I want people that want to win.
So do I, Mike. So do I. Here are just some of the press passes I have that are so awesome. And if you look at it, if you watch the show on YouTube, youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL, you can actually see me showing them to you. Rams Cardinals playoff game from when the Rams won the Super Bowl. Rams Cardinals playoff game from the sideline pass when they won the Super Bowl. I've got a sideline pass to the Rams Bucks game from Mike Golick. How about my Super Bowl press pass from this year, which is awesome? Eagles Giants divisional round press pass, which is sweet. Eagles Niners NFC Championship game press pass, as I just dropped it and picked it up. Then I've got Bills Bengals playoff pass. I've got my Eagles season pass, which is just awesome. Bills Dolphins, then all kinds of awesome college ones. Akron, Eastern Michigan, UNLV, San Diego State, FAU, Western Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Dolphins, Eagles, Browns, Yale, UConn, Houston, UConn. That's the Clayton Tune game from the year before. So I got a bunch of great press passes. I hope you guys try to enter some of these contests and win some of them. The winners this week include Nicholas Fox. Nicholas did so many things, Jack, I lost track. He really did. Did you see that email?
I think, is he the one that did like a bunch of reviews? Is that
He rated and reviewed like every show, every place you could possibly do it. He followed on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I mean, Nicholas made it so it wasn't even a discussion, honestly. Like, Nicholas just blew everybody else out of the water. So Nicholas, email me, ross@rosstucker.com. Let me know what press pass you would like, or if you'd rather have a signed picture or card. Scott Tews is our sponsor confirmation email winner. TEWS just sent me a picture of him drinking a Labatt Blue. How easy is that? How easy is that? You're welcome, Scott. Let me know what you'd like. And then the YouTube shout out is Matthew Mullen. He replied to one of the videos at youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL after subscribing and said, I'm really here for the shout out, Ross. I love it. That counts. Awesome, awesome work. Email me, guys. And next week, let me know. Start to hit me up with next week's winners already. I'll tell you on Monday how you can win the Spread the Word winner, but sponsor confirmation email winner is easy. Just go to the sponsor page at rosstucker.com. We post it pretty much with every episode. Or the YouTube shout-out's easy, youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL. Loving when we get new patrons, by the way. It's been a while. Patreon.com/RT Media. You can even be an I Think We're Done Here member of Patreon.com/RT Media and get a shout-out for your biz at the end of every show, like Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, HumanHeadNYC.com, SteakhouseSports.com, Go-Bengals.com, Evergreen Economics, BackOfficeScheduler.com, and the greatest gift you can give anyone for any reason, including their birthday, hint, hint, a story all about them, the front page treatment at myfrontpagestory.com. Have an awesome, awesome weekend, everybody. We will be back bright and early Monday morning with the Ross Tucker Football Podcast and the College Draft Podcast. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.